beside me.
It definitely sounded like he could be one. Well, did you give up on your rock band?
I did. I realized I had to have some other kind of talent other than my hair, and it just wasn't cutting it. So, back to the day job. Yeah, back in the 80s, you just had to make a bunch of noise. Now I think you need a little talent. Depends. Yeah. All right, this is a new monitor. There we go. Okay.
I'd like to welcome everyone to Reynoldsburg City Council meeting. And at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Reynoldsburg City Council meeting for June 14th, 2021. At this time, 6:31. I am Council President Angie Jenkins, and welcome to Reynoldsburg City Council meeting this evening. At this time, we'll have the invocation. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance following the invocation, when Councilmember Pacquiao will lead the invocation.
ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवा भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्जत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैश्चष्टुभागंसस्तनूभिर्वसेमहि देवयुतं जदायुः शतमिन्नु शरदो सन्ति देवाः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Let me tell this in English. Om Bhagavan, we are here. We may hear auspicious word with the ears while engaged in yajnas. May we see auspicious things with the eyes while praising Bhagavan with steady limbs. We may enjoy the life that is beneficial to the Bhagavan. May Indra, the ancient fame, be auspicious to us. May the supremely rich, all known Bhagavan of the earth. Om Santi, Om peace, peace and peace. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Molly, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Bryant?
Here.
Councilmember Strickland?
Present.
Councilmember Silvati?
Here.
Councilmember Pacquiao?
Here.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Here.
Councilmember Cotner?
Here.
And President Jenkins.
Here. Next, we'll have the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? The agenda stands approved as submitted. Next, we'll have the approval of minutes. Approval of City Council regular meeting minutes of May 24th, 2021. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Next, we will have the approval of City Council special meeting minutes of May 27th, 2021. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those special meeting minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Next, we'll have community comments. The community comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for citizens to address council. Citizens may bring matters to the attention of City Council or discuss items on the agenda. Before addressing City Council, members of the public are asked to complete a speaker's form and give it to the clerk. The council president will invite speakers to step to the microphone, give their name and address. All remarks will be addressed to council as a whole and not exceed 3 minutes. Are there any comments from the public?
Yes, Madam President.
Tatiana?
Good evening, Madam President Jenkins, council members, Mayor. My name is Tatiana Bujanovsky, and I'm a proud immigrant. I am honored that I was asked to speak here tonight as we celebrate Immigrant Heritage Month. So thank you, Councilmember Pacquiao. As most of you know, I was born and raised in Macedonia. Growing up, I was living a very happy childhood, unconcerned about what was going to happen in the future with my country, which at that point was still Yugoslavia. But my parents were concerned, and they knew that in order for my brother and I to have a better future, they had to make a major step, to move the family across the ocean. Just like it was yesterday, I remember dozens of my friends and relatives at the train station coming to say goodbye. Lots of tears, hugs, and promises that we will see each other again soon. At that time, I hated my parents' decision. I hated that they were taking me away from what at that time was my happiness. I was going to a country where I wouldn't know how to speak the language. I wouldn't know anyone. I wasn't going to have any friends. For what I knew and told my parents were that they had ruined my life. What I didn't know was that shortly after we left Macedonia, both my mom's and dad's factories were shut down, Yugoslavia fell apart, and a war started. What I didn't know was that we would not have survived, and we would have struggled. What I didn't know was that many of my friends I left behind did the same. They picked up and left and moved to different corners of the globe with their families. I am now very, very glad that my parents made that move. America was, is, and will probably always be the promised land, the land of opportunities. I have spoken once or twice before you in this very council chambers about my journey and the journeys of other immigrants and refugees in their lives in this new home. The transition is not easy, I know, but the opportunities are endless. Now I have the opportunity and privilege to work with many new Americans that have taken the opportunity to do their best and strive in this new home, just like once I did. We don't have to go too far to see this. Just look at our own Reynoldsburg. Look at the colors of our own fabric, the schools, the businesses in every corner of our city, different cultures, food, music, and so much more. All of this just adds on the richness of our city. Immigrants make Reynoldsburg great. Immigrants make Ohio great. And immigrants make America great. I'm honored to be part of a wonderful committee, some of which are here with me today, the Welcome and Diversity Committee of Reynoldsburg, and we have decided to present you with an all-nations flag, which I have right here. And we ask kindly that the flag is added to the poles in front of our City Hall. As we celebrate Immigrant Heritage Month, we would like to remind all immigrants and refugees that they are all welcome here. And I would add something else to immigrants and refugees. As you're thriving here, making and reaching new goals, living a good life in this wonderful free land of opportunities, in this beautiful city of respect, congratulations on making those moves. But never forget where you come from and always celebrate your heritage. I do. I'm a proud Macedonian American. And I have the flag with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Nelson?
Good evening, Council Chair Jenkins, esteemed members of the Council, Mayor, and my dear friend Buwan Payakura for inviting me to speak here tonight. My name is Rebecca Nelson, and I'm here to support everything that you and your city is doing around National Immigrant Heritage Month, recognizing refugees in our communities, and I noticed the pride conversation on the agenda as well. We know we're a nation of immigrants. And I thought I would open by sharing a personal family story for why this is so important to me. My mom is the Hawaiian Chinese side. My dad is the Danish side. Their marriage was one of 3 marriages that changed the anti-miscegenation law in the state of South Dakota. And since we just celebrated Loving Day, which celebrates when interracial marriages were allowed in this country, was actually years later with the Virginia case. But Loving Day is when we celebrate it. And I think this intersection between who we are as immigrants, who we are in our histories and our families, who we can choose to love and be with in our lives is really critical to who we are as Americans and where we want to be as humans, right? So my grandfather on my dad's side was a tenant farmer his entire life. They never owned property. They lived through the Dust Bowl in the South Dakotas. But he wrote a letter to the Argus Sun-Times. And I always think about my granddad, who never went beyond like a 4th grade education, right? So for me, as the product of immigrants and working now with many immigrants across Central Ohio, I think it's so important that we continue to uplift our personal stories, our personal triumphs, to know where we want to go, right? So I did want to share, there's this great video that's being played right now around National Immigrant Heritage Month, and it's called Out of Many, We Are One. And the person who speaks throughout the video, her name is Guarlene Joseph. She's the president of the Haitian Bridge Alliance. And one of the things she says in there really speaks to me. It says, we come to bring our full selves. We come to bring our full selves. So I want to thank you as a council for being forward-thinking, for knowing that the path forward is to be a welcoming city, and to accept, support, and advocate for all of our residents. Thank you for standing with immigrants.
Thank you.
Mr. Sarek?
Madam President, council members, Mr. Mayor, my name is John Syriac. I'm at 8322 Bedlington Drive in Reynoldsburg. I'm also a member of the Welcome and Diversity Committee, and I was asked to come and just say a few words to support the committee. Either shortly before or right after Mayor Begany was elected, I spoke to him personally. He's been so kind to give his time to me, and I said, you know, my neighborhood is changing. Like in 18 months, we have new people walking around. And I was just so struck to say, there will be cultural shifts in my community, and we should have conversations about that, because I was listening to my neighbors who had positive comments, and then there were concerns, and I said, Mr. Mayor, you know, we should get ahead of the curve here. And he was just amazingly receptive to that thought. And I think the citizen committees is one of those fruits from the conversations I had with the mayor. And so I'm on the Welcome and Diversity Committee, and I was asked to say a few words. So after I was asked that, the next morning I woke up to do my regular routine, and I'm a member of a book club. And the book we're reading is on fraternity and social friendship by Pope Francis. And I thought, better than me speak, I'll bring Pope Francis to say a few words about diversity to our community in Reynoldsburg. So I'll just quote him. Our local experience needs to develop in contrast to and in harmony with the experiences of others living in diverse cultural contexts. In fact, a healthy openness never threatens one's own identity. A living culture enriched by elements from other places does not import a mere carbon copy of those new elements, but integrates them in its own unique way. The results is a new synthesis that is ultimately beneficial to all, since the original culture itself ends up being nourished. That is why I've urged indigenous peoples to cherish their roots and their ancestral cultures. At the same time, though, I have wanted to stress that I have no intention of proposing a completely enclosed, ahistoric, static indigenism that would reject any kind of blending. For our own cultural identity is strengthened and enriched as a result of dialogue with those unlike ourselves. Nor is our authentic identity preserved by an impoverished isolation. The world grows and is filled with new beauty thanks to the successive synthesis produced between cultures that are open and free of any form of cultural impositions. For a healthy relationship between love of one's native land and a sound sense of belonging to our larger human family, it is helpful to keep in mind that global society is not the sum total of different countries, but rather the communion that exists among them. Thank you, Council, for this time.
Thank you.
Madam President, we have two pieces of correspondence, emails for council.
Thank you.
The first is from David Hamad with Dave's Tires, Wheels, and Auto Service. My name is David Hamad, and I own David's Tires, Wheels, and Auto Service on Main Street in Reynoldsburg. I've been in business for 31 years and a Reynoldsburg resident for 40-plus years. Like most of my fellow merchants, our homes are here, our children have been in or are in our school system. We have definitely taken our civic responsibilities very seriously, and when needed for our city, have stepped up. Most of our merchants remember Streetscape when the traffic disruptions put some out of business and crippled many others. We all bought into the project as a matter of civic priority despite the pain and financial hardship it caused. Fast forward to 2021, we are all facing a new issue. I can't be sure who is backing this assault on our merchants and property owners. It has been a very difficult 18 months for all of us with the pandemic and all that has come with it. While I was in the hospital, a zoning code inspector stopped by my store and talked to my office manager. His name is William DeLong, and he claimed he has the full authority of the city. He wanted me to repave my parking lot, not needed, remove the concrete apron of the building and put new concrete in, not needed, paint the building and hide the dumpster, as well as a few other things. I have since found out that the code inspector has made the same demands of my fellow merchants. This all came with threats of fines and worse if we do not comply. I'm not sure about anyone else, but I don't have $60,000 or so for capital improvements. My property tax at the store is over $22,000, and my house is over $7,500 per year, plus all of the payroll taxes, and on and on. And now the city wants even more from all of my property owners using threats and intimidation. How can this possibly be happening? Please, city leaders, stop this before you kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. The next correspondence is from Greg Deddy at 1531 Turo Avenue. He has 3 issues. Issue 1, drug rehab that is moved into 1551 Turo Avenue. When 1551 Turo Avenue facility was built, the use was to be for MMRD home. Our neighborhood attended multiple council meetings trying to block this. We felt that those in charge did not care, and it was built. Now it is in use by Lighthouse Behavioral Health Solutions for drug rehab. We, the Turo residents, are not notified prior to this change. I am concerned for the safety of my pet, grandchildren, and ourselves. There has been ongoing suspicious behavior since the move-in back in April 2021. This includes fire, EMS, Reynoldsburg Police, and Sheriff Department. All have documented runs to 1551 Turo location. This was a quiet residential street. It was rare for any law enforcement or emergency services to have a reason to be in this forgotten street. The traffic has greatly increased in all hours of the day and night, and still a lot of horn honking from the Lighthouse drivers. We have documented activity and safety concerns with Reynoldsburg Police and Franklin County Sheriff's Department. The documented activity is still going on. Issue 2, Apple Alley. This was put on the city's maps in the 1800s. It was never built. I have maintained at my expense the portion of Apple Alley behind my property for the past 30 years. This area is approximately 20 feet wide and 120 feet long. I spoke with the past and present city attorneys over the last 5 years to acquire this swath of land that I've been maintaining. Both were going to research for an answer to my inquiry. Bill Sampson had Apple Alley surveyed at taxpayers' expense and deemed it too costly to utilize. Issue 3, sale of city water plant. The proposed sale and future development of the city water plant will cause hardships on this quiet residential neighborhood. Property value decrease, potential crime, traffic increase, litter, and noise. Turo Avenue is a single-lane road beginning just past my property and continuing on to St. John Street. There is no other road access to the city water plant. Turo Avenue is a very old and well-established, quiet neighborhood and not designed for the traffic increase from a potential condo apartment development. In my opinion, Reynoldsburg has enough apartment complexes. Only the developer will benefit from this. That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from council? Are Are there any comments from Mayor Beggany?
Yes, Madam President, I do have a few. Thank you for providing a little bit of time. I do have a couple of proclamations and some very special happy birthday wishes that I would like to share. The first is a proclamation and a recognition of International Day of Yoga. Whereas for many years, yoga teachers and students desired a collective global celebration of over 5,000-year-old physical, mental, and spiritual practice of yoga. And whereas in 2014, the United Nations General Assembly declared June 21st the International Day of Yoga. During his address to the General Assembly in support of declaring the global celebration, the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, observed, "Yoga is an invaluable gift of India's ancient tradition. It embodies unity of mind and body, thought and action, restraint and fulfillment, harmony between man and nature, a holistic approach to health and well-being. It is not about exercise, but to discover the sense of one's oneness with yourself, the world, and nature." And whereas the word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means to unite or integrate, and one objective of yoga practice is to harmonize the body, spirit, and mind through various breathing exercises, yoga poses, also called asanas, and meditation. And whereas there are an estimated 36 million Americans who practice yoga, and whereas yoga brings strength, stability, and unity within the body, mind, and emotions, yoga, however, can be more than a type of mental or physical exercise. Yoga may be used as a means to discover a sense of oneness and connection within oneself, other people, the world, nature, and the universe. A regular practice of yoga may help promote a healthy body, a violence-free society, a clear mind, an open intellect, peacefulness with past experiences, and a joyful soul, and a strong breath. Now, therefore, I, Joe Beggany, Mayor of the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, proclaim June 21st, 2021 as the International Day of Yoga, signed and sealed on this date. So I would like to take a moment to invite Councilman Paccarel to come down. You're already on your way up. Come on. Come on.
Hello, respected council members, Madam President, Mr. Mayor. Hope you all are doing well. I am Akshay Dhariwal, IT professional in healthcare industry. I am here to talk about International Yoga Day, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for explaining the International Yoga Day and yoga briefly. That was amazing. I start by saying that this pandemic time, if not anything but taught us the importance of physical and mental health and respect towards the nature. And here I am to talk about the yoga. Yoga is commonly understood as a therapy or exercise system for health and fitness. While physical and mental health are natural consequences of yoga, the goal of yoga is far reaching. Yoga is about harmonizing oneself with the universe. It is the technology of aligning individuals' geometry with the cosmic to achieve the highest level of perception and harmony. The practice of yoga is believed to have started with the very dawn of the civilization. The science of yoga has its origin thousands of years ago, long before the first religion or belief systems were born. Yoga does not adhere to any particular religion, belief system, or community. It has always been approached as a technology for inner well-being. Anyone who practices yoga with involvement can reap its benefit irrespective of one's faith, ethnicity, or culture. With that, I end my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do have one other proclamation. This one is the opportunity for me to have the second annual proclamation in regards to the Juneteenth celebration, which will kind of segue into some conversations about our event that Councilwoman Meredith Lawson-Rowe will be speaking about shortly. Whereas Juneteenth is a holiday marking the end of slavery in the United States, and whereas this year marks the second City of Reynoldsburg Juneteenth Freedom Day recognition, and whereas the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect January 1st, 1863, and whereas the Civil War ended in April of 1865, and whereas Union Army General Gordon Granger landed at the Texas port city of Galveston in June 1865, one of his first actions on June 19th, 1865, was to read General Order Number 3, which states that all slaves are free and that former masters and slaves have absolute equality of personal and property rights. And whereas, following his statement, June 19th, Juneteenth, became the emancipation date of those long suffering for freedom. And whereas, since then, as the oldest known celebration commemorating the end of slavery in America, this tradition of celebration has remained strong well into the 21st century to recognize the triumph of the human spirit over the cruelty of slavery and to honor the strength, endurance, and faith of African American ancestors. And whereas it is imperative that citizens across the state join together to acknowledge this time in our history that is a recognized holiday in 47 of 50 states that works to carry on the nation's ideals of equality and democracy and celebrate the joys of liberty and justice for every American. Now, therefore, I, Joe Begany, Mayor of the City of Reynoldsburg, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2021 as Juneteenth Celebration Day in Reynoldsburg. I encourage all citizens in the City of Reynoldsburg to participate in Juneteenth Day and celebrate African American history and culture that enriches and adds a strong sense of community for our state. Happily signed and honorably signed in witness whereof the seal of this great city of Reynoldsburg and my signature hereto affixed on June 19th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, I have to throw this out there. This was a fun day for me. I got to celebrate the 100th birthday of Mary Lou Curtis earlier today. I had the luxury of celebrating her 99th birthday last year during a COVID pandemic drive-by. This year, we got a huge group of people together at Huber Park, cake, cookies, ice cream, and she's in better shape than I am. And wow, this woman has accomplished so many things in our life, including being a substitute in our school system, recognized all the way throughout a number of different things, service as an American Airlines stewardess, and she is living strong. So we joked a little bit in a few moments about how she was born at the tail end of the last pandemic, and here she is already at the next one. But she has seen 100 years of American history and has seen the good, the bad, and everything in with it. And I would like to wish her a very happy birthday if she is watching yet again. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Next, we'll have a presentation from Councilmember Lawson-Rowe regarding the upcoming Juneteenth celebration.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam President, members of council. If I may have just a point of personal privilege to just highlight the importance of relationship building and connections and how it benefits our city. You know that is my passion, and it's what makes my heart beat. So I'd like to personally thank Mr. Chavez Moman. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I met him. It's because of his relationship that I have met him, and he has introduced me to many members of the African American Male Wellness, and we know that Mr. Gregory is a resident. He's one of our neighbors here in Reynoldsburg, and so I'd like for them to all come forward. They have a presentation that they'd like to share this evening. And so this presentation is just a segue into our event that we're planning this Saturday, June 19th, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Huber Park. And I hope everyone here that's in the audience and my council colleagues would look forward to joining us in all the fun. So please come forward. Thank you.
Greetings, Council. How are we doing today?
Hello, thank you for coming.
Oh, I was going to say, like you said, go ahead. I didn't know. Reynoldsburg resident. My wife and I, we're proud Reynoldsburg residents. And we are so excited about what this city council is doing in Reynoldsburg. Every time we see a new, something going up or some improvement, we're like, yeah, Reynoldsburg's catching up. So we are glad, and you should give yourselves a round of applause for doing a great job. So I'm here today because we're excited about partnering with the city of Reynoldsburg. And really this year, we're going from getting representatives from every city to be an ambassador. So I would just like to show you the card as we have. Y'all got a card? Yes. And Councilman Stacy is our ambassador for Reynoldsburg, and he's going to create a Reynoldsburg passing team. And what we want to do, what we believe is that Reynoldsburg can represent. This initiative is about saving African American men. The date is August 14th. On that day, we will be doing free testing. We will also be doing free vaccines with the county health department. African American men, the average age is 67. Life expectancy in that of a white male is 79. So one of the things we're trying to do is close that gap. We're excited because during the course of the year, we have lots of different programs. We have a fatherhood program. In Franklin County, 73% of African American children are not kindergarten ready. We work to get fathers involved, engaged with their kids so they can become kindergarten ready. We have a Cooking with Dads program where we are cooking with kids, getting fathers, but it's really a father program so that father and their kids can be together. And then what we have is a financial wellness where we do financial wellness with African Americans to kind of get them prepared to close that gap too, because that's a gap, the financial wellness gap. And then we do the health and wellness. We also are doing an opiate campaign. So at your event, we will have an opiate table there to really, people don't really understand that the opiate crisis is in your urban community too. And we have a campaign called It's Our Problem Too. So we got a lot of stuff going on. We're going to be proud to be here on Saturday. The weather looked like it's going to be good. And we thank the city council individuals. I think that Marlon and Chavez are the ones who really put all this together. They came to me and said, hey, Councilman, what's her name again? Mayor, she said, we're coming to Reynoldsburg. So we didn't have a choice. So Marlon, you want to say something? Thank you for having us again today. This has been a great experience. Mayor, thank you for also jumping in here and being so willing to advocate and to celebrate Juneteenth. We know what Juneteenth means to us as a black community. So to have the city of Reynoldsburg embrace that, to have Councilwoman Mildred Lawson Rowe really put this on her back and say she's going to put on an event and use her platform to do what's right. And so I want to give you a round of applause, Councilwoman, for all that you've been doing. You have been a blessing and a pleasure to work with. And so we're really looking to come out and make change in Reynoldsburg as well as the rest of Franklin County. So we're happy to be a part of the event on Saturday, and the weather is going to be good, and we're going to have a great time. Thank you.
And we're going to ask that, could council tonight pass something that y'all want to pull up our signs? You know, we put signs out, we come back the next day. They're going to have your councilman's face on them. How would you dare throw those in the trash can? So
We took
excited.
care of that already, trust me, not like last time.
So we're excited, and the funny thing is we're on the phone with City Council, Columbus City Council, because we were supposed to be there for another presentation, and we chose to come here and be here with you all because we really believe in Reynoldsburg, and I'm a proud Reynoldsburg resident. So see you Saturday, have a great time, and thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Madam President, Madam President, may Councilmember Baker come forward and get a picture with Mr. Gregory and team?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
And before I do that, I want to say thank you and welcome to Reynoldsburg. Some of you might not know, Mr. Gregory's son and I played football together, so I can just say I was better than him.
Can I say something? I was talking to Councilwoman Losandro before. On Saturday, there's African American male walk. There's, I think, 5K walk or run. So I'm going to claim that first prize. So I'm there.
We're going to come back and get you on camera. And we're going to post that.
Is that a challenge?
That's a challenge.
Let's see.
You got to get that on tape, Marvin. And we want all the Reynoldsburg residents to come. You know, the walk is open for everybody. Matter of fact, I should have told you this on Thursday of the week, because we're having a whole week, we're having a Lift Her Up campaign where we want men to bring the women in their life to get screened. Because women, you know, y'all don't like to get screened either. And so we're really having a whole campaign put on by Ohio State University to get women to come get screened. They're getting free mammograms, free lung, and free something else. And then the regular one. So, Ms. Gregory, you're in charge of the women.
They're going to take the photo.
Can you look at me real quick? Gotcha.
Did you bring the cameras?
The next item on the agenda is the public hearing. There's a public hearing for 2022 tax budget this evening. Would the clerk please read the ordinance?
A resolution adopting the tax budget for the city of Reynoldsburg, Ohio for the fiscal year beginning 2022 and declaring an emergency.
If anyone would like to speak on this ordinance, please step to the microphone and give your name and address.
Hello, President Jenkins. As we do every year, this is the beginning of the tax budget. You've all had the budget spreadsheet for a few weeks, and this is the time in which we open up the hearing to the public if there are any questions. The spreadsheet's been on file with the Clerk of Council for over 10 days, and that is our legal requirement.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? As there are no comments, this public hearing is closed. Next on the agenda is the communications. Do we have any other communications this evening?
No, Madam President.
Item 10 on the agenda is motions. A motion to approve a resolution to recognize Tina Maharat. Councilmember Pacquiao, please read this resolution.
Thank you, President Jenkins. And thank you, Senator Maharat, for coming here and being present in the council right now. So let me read the resolution and want to thank you for what you've done. A resolution of appreciation for Tina Maharat. Whereas the city of Reynoldsburg wishes to recognize Tina Maharat for her outstanding dedication and continuous commitment to the Reynoldsburg community and the state of Ohio. And whereas Ms. Maharat chooses to dedicate her life to public service at a young age, being inspired by her upbringing as a daughter of refugee parents from Laos, and whereas having lost her mother and two brothers as a teen, Ms. Maharat understands what it means to face tragedy. She uses her own personal experience as a warrior for underserved and troubled youth, mentoring young adults and advocating for issues impacting people facing trauma, and whereas Ms. Maharat served on the Lao Volunteer Donation Association Advisory Board, as well as the organizing committee and later chair of the Ohio Asian American and Pacific Islander Legislative Day. And whereas she also volunteers for various organizations throughout Central Ohio, including Legacies of War, the Ohio Asian American Health Coalition, Community Refugee Immigration Services, the Community Shelter Board, and Asian American Community Services. And whereas in November 2018, Ms. Maharat was elected to the Ohio Senate for the 3rd District and served proudly as the first Asian American woman elected to the Ohio Senate. And whereas Ms. Maharat has expressed her dedication to support struggling youth in our community in order to improve their lives and offer young people a bright future. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of Reynoldsburg, Section 1, the Reynoldsburg City Council is proud to acknowledge, recognize, and value Tina Maharat for her remarkable years of community service, her commitment to our community and state, and her dedication to citizenry of Reynoldsburg and the state of Ohio. Senator Maharat, do you want to say something else?
Council President Mrs. Jenkins, Mayor, council members, and City Attorney, I appreciate your time here today. Councilman Buwan actually oversold this to me. I thought I was just coming here to recognize Asian American Pacific Islander Month, so I didn't have anything prepped. So the last time I actually lived in Reynoldsburg was 2008. This was my last place of residency before I got placed in the foster services. So my history with Reynoldsburg has been long and enduring. It's been a lot of trauma, but I'm happy to see that people like me, people like Buwan, are still trying to make pathway to success for our future generation of refugees. Back in my time in Reynoldsburg High School, I was essentially the only Laotian at the high school at the time. So during that time, I always had a battle that I'm not Asian enough, I'm not American enough. But finally, I found my place here in the city of Reynoldsburg and the 3rd State District, which is being Ohio's first Asian American woman. So I appreciate your time today, and I also appreciate the everlasting efforts to try to be more inclusive. I appreciate it, because back in 2008, the refugee resettlement services were very slim to none. So it's so refreshing to see more diversity, and it's so refreshing to see us welcomed here in the city of Reynoldsburg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's his now.
Do we have any questions or comments from anyone on council? May I have a motion to recognize Tina Maharat?
Motion.
Councilmember Baker, is there a second? Councilmember Bryant, is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve a resolution recognizing the city of Reynoldsburg as a welcoming city that celebrates the growing diversity of its residents and acknowledges that refugees, immigrants, and all newcomers enhance the culture and the economy by acknowledging World Refugee Day. Councilmember Pacquiao, please read this resolution.
Thank you, President Jenkins. So this one is very close to my heart. I spent 18 years of my life in a refugee camp in Nepal because of the rules and because of the action of the King of Bhutan. And today I am here in the City Council recognizing this day. This is personally very, very important to me and thousands and millions of refugees around the world today. So with that, also whenever I see these kind of things, I get emotional all the time. Thankful for this country and the people of this country for giving me an opportunity to live a second chance of my life. Thank you all. This is this is more important than anything else you can imagine. I often tell it's more important than even the God, because if you have a citizen, then only you can choose which God you want to pray. If you are not citizen, you cannot even choose the God. So this is a very important day, and also this country has given anything possible a country can give to human being, that is to recognize me as a human and other refugees as a human. So on that note, let me read this resolution with my full heart in it. Whereas 2021 marks the 70th anniversary of the 1951 United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees and the 60th anniversary of 1961 United Nations Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness. And whereas the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted on December 4, 2000, a resolution naming June 20th annually as World Refugee Day to honor the courage, strength, resilience of forcibly displaced persons around the world. And whereas the Central Ohio community recognizes the additional barrier that the COVID-19 pandemic placed on individuals seeking a prosperous and secure future, and recognizes the innovation and resilience of various service provider organizations in providing continued access to services and support for refugees during pandemic. And whereas the city of Reynoldsburg has demonstrated leadership and compassion by welcoming refugees and immigrants of all nations to our community, and whereas the city of Reynoldsburg is a home to diverse population of refugees and immigrants, adding to the economic strength and cultural richness of our community. And whereas cities across the United States have declared themselves to welcome to refugees and immigrants, joining national movement for creating an inclusive community. And whereas residents of city of Reynoldsburg aspire to live up to our highest social values of acceptance and quality, to treat newcomers with dignity and respect, to create vibrant community for all to live. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the city of Reynoldsburg that this council does hereby recognize and declare June 20, 2021 as a World Refugee Day in the city of Reynoldsburg, passed on this date, 14th of June, 2021.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve a resolution recognizing the city of Reynoldsburg as a welcoming city that celebrates the growth and diversity of its residents and acknowledges refugees, immigrants, and all newcomers, enhancing the culture and economy by acknowledging World Refugee Day?
So moved.
Councilmember Strickland, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Bryant, is there any other discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry, Councilmember Pacquiao.
We're good.
All opposed? The motion carries. Do you have any other comments?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Council, for adopting this one. And I also like to acknowledge and thank Tatiana for coming out and speaking and bringing the all-national flag today. I didn't know until this morning. So thank you for doing all the work behind the scene. And John, being a long-term resident here and recognizing the diversity and the changing community, that is so important that you recognize. Thank you so much for that. And Rebecca, coming all the way and speaking about and sharing your story, that is very important that we need to continue to tell our stories. And finally, Senator Maharat, you carried a story behind each one of us. Like you are the inspiration and like many, many younger people, especially young ladies, they will look at you. My daughter talks about you quite a lot, and she talks about being a senator and all kind of policies, into the politics anyway. So she talks about you as a role model for many people. So thank you for being what you are doing. And after all, thank you everyone for being here and recognizing this day. And at the end, I also like to recognize Auditor Sisek for last time for bringing the importance of language and bringing the recognition of language and need of language and passing this resolution in our city to provide the language services for the community who speak language other than English in the city of Reynoldsburg. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other discussion? Yes.
More so comment out of discussion. I do want to thank Tatiana and the committee for that presentation because they really highlight what Reynoldsburg is all about. Like the motto said, the city of respect. We are growing into that motto, and I'm proud that we are, first of all. Second of all, Councilman Pacquiao, don't sell yourself short. You're a true story of what it's like to come here and make something. And so don't sell yourself short. And I do applaud you for bringing this resolution forward. And Mr. Mayor, thank you. Had to end somehow. But it is an honor and a privilege to call ourselves the city of respect. And all those are welcome, no matter who you are and where you're from.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from council? Next, we have a motion to approve a resolution recognizing Pride Month, June 2021. Councilmember Bryant, please read this resolution.
Thank you, President Jenkins. Whereas Pride Month began in June 1969 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City after LGBTQ persons and their allies rose up to fight against discriminatory laws which have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas the city of Reynoldsburg denounces prejudice and unfair discrimination based on age, race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, and is a city where all persons should feel valued, safe, welcomed, respected, and affirmed by the community. And whereas all are welcome in Reynoldsburg to live, work, and play, and every family in all its various forms deserve a place to call home where they are safe and happy and supported by friends and neighbors. And whereas Reynoldsburg appreciates the value and dignity of each person, recognizes the importance of equality and freedom, and acknowledges the positive contributions made by members of the LGBTQ community to actively promote principles of equality and acceptance. And whereas the city of Reynoldsburg accepts and welcomes people of diverse backgrounds and believes a diverse population leads to a more vibrant community. Therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Reynoldsburg, we, the City Council of Reynoldsburg, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2021 as Pride Month in Reynoldsburg, and we urge our residents to reflect on the ongoing struggle for equality that members of the LGBTQ community face and celebrate their contributions to our city.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from council? May I have a motion to recognize Pride Month, June 2021?
So moved.
Councilmember Pacquiao, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Baker. Is there any other discussion?
Well, just thank you for bringing that resolution forward.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Councilmember Meredith Lawson-Rowe?
Yes, I just wanted to publicly and personally thank Councilmember Bryant for planning and executing the Pride celebration that we had at Civic Park this past Saturday. It was a huge success, great turnout, good job. Thank you.
Yes, it was very well attended, and we all had a good time. Councilmember Pacquiao had his first snow cone. So it was very good. And I
And it
won't
was
tell the
all
rest
worth
of the
it.
story.
It was all worth it.
I had ice cream.
Is there any other further discussion? Next, we have a motion to approve a resolution to proclaim June as Brain and Alzheimer Awareness Month. Councilmember Cotner, please.
Motion to approve a resolution to proclaim June as Brain and Alzheimer Awareness Month. Whereas every 65 seconds an individual develops Alzheimer's disease, and it's the most expensive disease in America, costing the nation $355 billion this year. And whereas June 2021 is Brain and Alzheimer's Awareness Month, recognizing a disease that affects more than 6 million Americans and 228,000 Ohioans. And whereas, as a degenerative disease, Alzheimer's is thought to begin 20 years before symptoms arise. And whereas, recognizing these events provide an opportunity to promote and join the global conversation about the brain and Alzheimer's disease as a public health crisis. And whereas, caregiving for individuals with Alzheimer's disease often takes an enormous toll on family members, caregivers themselves often suffer more stress, depression, and health problems than caregivers of people with other illnesses. And whereas the Alzheimer's Association is the largest nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's research and provides care and support to those living with the disease today with the help and support of its dedicated volunteers. And whereas we recognize the important role of the Alzheimer's Association Central Ohio chapter plays in meeting the needs of people affected by Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia throughout family and clinical support, early detection and diagnosis of disease education, advocacy, and research. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Reynoldsburg, we do hereby recognize June 2021 as Brain and Alzheimer Awareness Month and encourage all Reynoldsburg residents to participate in the September 26, 2021 Columbus Walk to End Alzheimer's Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? May I have a motion to recognize June as Brain and Alzheimer Awareness Month?
So moved. I was going to thank Councilmember Cotner for bringing that. I think he's well aware of my family's struggle with that, and means a lot.
But it was brought by council, and happy to read that tonight.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, sir.
May I have a motion?
I already moved. Yeah, I already did. You gotta get a second, though. I'm sorry. You gotta get a second.
May I have a second, please? Councilmember Pacquiao. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll have our reports. Chief Baker with the liquor report.
Thank you, President Jenkins, members of council. We had an investigation that was completed for a transfer of a liquor permit held by BIM International Market LLC that was doing business as VS Cafe at 1355 Briarcliff Road. The permit is being transferred to Yush Sports Bar and Restaurant LLC that will be doing business as Shatari Sports Bar at the same location. Shatari Sports Bar is owned by Adakari and Yadav Pudel. The liquor permit is a D1, D2, D3, D6 class, which allows for sale and consumption of beer, wine, and liquor on premises, and also allows for the sale of intoxicating liquor on Sundays. There have been no alcohol-related calls between 2018 and now at that location. The Ohio Department of Liquor Control advised our investigator that the transfer has a tax issue which could prevent this permit from being transferred, but that is not an issue for us to decide. I do not recommend that we request a hearing for this permit transfer at this time.
Thank you. There is no Development, Parks, and Recreation Committee meeting this evening. Next, we'll move on to Public Safety, Law, and Courts Committee. Councilmember Bryant.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This is a Public Safety, Law, and Courts Committee meeting for June 14th, 2021. Members in attendance are Councilmember Cotner, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, Councilmember Peckerell, myself, and President Jenkins. Item 1 on the agenda is an ordinance to amend Section 505.17, nuisance conditions prohibited, limiting the number of domesticated animals kept in a residential district. This legislation is for a work session only. Attorney Shook.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bryant and members of council. This is an ordinance that is being brought before council for a work session this evening. This would probably not be a particularly popular ordinance, and it's not the kind of law that you consider needing until you have a situation that demonstrates your need for it. Later in the meeting this evening, you will be hearing an ordinance for the certification of nuisance abatement costs associated with a property over on Scenic Road. We had a situation at a premises on that road where residents had been harboring over 40 Australian Shepherds. For years, they had been engaged in breeding activities, and it got to a point where the conditions of the premises were inhabitable for animals and for human beings. We had to condemn the premises and engage in self-help efforts to clean the property. This raised the question of where we are at as a city and our ability to address situations like that in the future. Obviously, we're a suburban community, not an agricultural community, and most of our homes are relatively medium to small in size, as are our residential lots. So I researched other communities and how they address situations like this. Just in the Central Ohio area, other communities, Bexley has an animal limitation of a maximum of 5 dogs, cats, and/or chickens combined. Upper Arlington has a maximum of 4 cats or dogs. Grandview, Heights, and Hilliard each have a maximum of 4 cats and/or 4 dogs. Whitehall has a maximum of 3 dogs. The ordinance that's been presented is intentionally blank as to what that number might be in the city, but it would be the recommendation that there is a number that would promote both health and sanitary conditions in our residential community and support the humane treatment of animals in our community. As we know, there can become a point in which an individual is just no longer capable of handling a situation and a number of animals and being able to provide care for them that is necessary. So this is on for a work session this evening for that kind of discussion. I can tell you I reached out to the executive director of the Licking County Humane Society because I wanted to make sure that we were considering whether a limitation would be the proper humane action. And in my conversation with the executive director, she agreed that in a suburban community such as Reynoldsburg, there is an appropriate limitation number that both promotes health and safety as well as humane treatment of those animals. So this is being brought before council, and I hope to have some significant discussion and direction as to where you would like to go with this.
All right, thank you, Attorney Shook. I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of is the residents that already may have a number of animals, whether they're cats, dogs, or otherwise. We don't want to be in a position of telling anyone that they need to get rid of their pets. So I think, the most, one of the things that we should be doing here is having a solution to grandfather in people who have multiple pets, so that we can take that into account and also be aware of where those circumstances lie, so that we don't have another incident like what we had happen on Scenic Drive.
And we've talked about that, and I think that is something we can accommodate. We would obviously want to look for the right language, how to grandfather those in, with obviously an open mind to the possibility that there could be already situations like the scenic road situation in the city that we just don't know about.
And I would suggest, I don't know, obviously, how this might affect people who do have a lawful breeding service. You know, I think when we're looking at the numbers, we need to, you know, possibly look at an age of an animal, so that we determine that, you know, if somebody's dog has a litter of 10 puppies, you know, that could put them over the limit of number of animals. So we want to ensure that that doesn't happen as well.
Yeah, in my discussion with the executive director of the Licking County Humane Society, she expressed the longstanding position of various humane societies around the country that they are opposed to private residential breeding. But she did recommend that we create an exemption for any puppies or kittens that are 6 months old or younger.
6 months seems appropriate to me. Yes, Councilmember Pecorell.
So, Attorney Shook, you found that over 40 animals were there. What they were doing with those 40 animals, like?
Well, there's a pretty long background here. Since we're going to talk about it later, I'll give a little bit of that background now. This is a property that had been reported by several neighbors on this street. This is an offshoot street from Broad Street. It's in the Jefferson Township portion of the city. In 2019, there was an investigation conducted by the Department of Agriculture to determine if they were required to be a licensed commercial breeder and to determine if the dogs on the premises were being treated inhumanely. At that time, the conclusion was that they were not a commercial breeder, but it was apparent that they were engaging in breeding activity. In addition, at that time, the Capital Area Humane Society determined that the dogs were not being treated in an inhumane condition. However, what happened after that is that the owners started keeping the dogs indoors, and they were not letting them outside. And so the condition of the inside of the premises significantly deteriorated over a short period of time. So I think the history here was that they were breeding, and then at some point they just could not continue to handle the situation.
Attorney Shook, we did an overhaul of the Animals and Fowl Code about a year and a half ago, and I don't recall there being any limits on breeding. Is that a permitted activity in the city, or did we?
So we have provisions in our zoning code that prohibit certain commercial activity in residential districts.
Right.
And obviously, we're going to be bringing some zoning code changes here, I think, in the next couple of meetings. And that's something we can discuss then. But essentially, with commercial activity inside a residential home, no one should be able to tell that that's going on in there. And if you can tell that someone is engaging in commercial breeding, they would be engaging in a zoning code violation in the city.
Okay. But nothing specific about?
Nothing specific. We could certainly put that in there, but it is a difficult thing to police unless they're holding themselves out to be a commercial breeder in a residential district.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments from council?
I have a question.
Yes, President Jenkins.
When you researched the other communities and you found the numbers to be 3 and 4 for dogs and cats, did they have any exceptions for breeders?
They did not. They did have similar exceptions for puppies and kittens under a certain age. I can tell you that the city of Whitehall has had their restriction in for several decades, and they were actually sued back in 1991 over their ordinance, and they were able to successfully uphold their ordinance. I don't think that in my conversations with Chair Bryant, we were thinking of doing anything as restrictive as what Whitehall does in limiting their ownership to just 3 dogs.
Do you want to share what we talked about in terms of potential numbers, or?
I can tell you that, again, the number in the proposed ordinance is intentionally blank because, I mean, that's something that We know that there is a number, we just don't necessarily know what that number is. And it may just be a number that we have to reach a compromise about, one that isn't going to make anybody happy. I can tell you the recommendation from the executive director of the Lincoln County Humane Society was somewhere between 6 to 8 dogs. We did not specifically discuss limitations on cats. And dogs, of course, present additional potential nuisance problems in the neighborhood that cats don't because they're louder. That's why we have dog barking ordinances.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Attorney Shook. Yes, Councilmember Baker.
Just want to clarify, when you give a general number of 5 dogs, 5 cats, that's not a total. That's just what you can have of each breed.
So
Each animal.
in Grandview Heights and Hilliard, that's you could have 4 cats and 4 dogs. So you could have up to 8 total. In Bexley, it would be 5 total of dogs, cats, or chickens in any combination. They actually have chickens legalized in Bexley. And in Upper Arlington, it's combination for maximum of any kind.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? I think I would probably suggest maybe a limit. We had discussed a limit on the number of dogs and then leaving, cats out of it. I don't know how anybody on council feels about that, if we'd like to have a total number of dogs and cats, or if we want to just look at the number of dogs for the reasons that Attorney Shook mentioned in terms of noise and, taking them outdoors.
I would say if we do one for one, we should do one for the other. Oh, sorry. I think if you do one for dogs, you have to do one for cats. It's only fair because some people are dog lovers and not cat lovers, and vice versa. So we want to make sure that it's equal.
Are you thinking in terms of a total number of animals or?
The total number, because that's what it's leaning towards. Not you have 5 dogs and 5 cats. You can have no more. That's 10 animals, but just the overall number.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I don't really know. Honestly, just trying to think that through. I mean, if we're doing it for nuisance purposes, that house could have just as easily had 40 cats in it and could have been the problem. So I've gone into places that had cats that they didn't take a whole lot of care of either. So, I mean, if we're talking, again, I think it's good to have a work session to talk through these things. But then if you did 8 and 8, 16 animals in a Huber home, that's a lot of animals that your neighbors have to still put up with a little bit, maybe? So again, I think it's certainly worthy talking about. I don't know the answer either, but I think it's good to discuss for sure.
You said Licking County was talking about 6 to 8 for dogs?
That was a recommendation from the executive director of the Humane Society. And I have a good relationship with her. I used to be a board member for the Humane Society there. And her recommendation was limited to the fact that we're a suburban community. Obviously, it would be different if we had an abundance of farmland in the community. But as a suburban community, obviously, we have different size homes, Huber homes, obviously there's got to be a number there. But I think the reason why it's such a difficult topic to discuss is that we're talking about, first of all, animals that most of us own and care about. And we're talking about our neighbors who we know already own them, some of whom may already own more than the number we're thinking about. And that makes it very difficult.
True. Anybody else?
My suggestion would be to get back with Chair Bryant and then draft something consistent with some of her recommendations and come back to council at a future date.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This ordinance will be brought back to committee for the next meeting. Second item on the agenda is an ordinance to amend Section 373 bicycles and motorcycles of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg to remove bicycle licensing requirements. Attorney Shook.
Yes, Councilmember Bryant, this was brought to my attention by our police department. They had been contacted by a resident to obtain a bicycle license, at which time we all became aware that we have an ordinance on the books that requires people to get a bicycle license. So kudos to that resident for following the law. However, we have not issued bicycle licenses in anyone's recent memory who currently works at the Reynoldsburg Police Department. So this is not only not a law we have enforced, it's not a law where we've been giving the people the ability to even comply because we haven't been issuing those licenses. As a general rule, bicycle licenses, the purpose is twofold. One, it's to make it easier to identify stolen vehicles or stolen motorcycles. I had to coach T-ball, please give me a break. Stolen bicycles. And number two, for some cities, it's to raise revenue on the fee amounts. We have discussed this. We don't see a need for a licensing requirement here in the city of Reynoldsburg. We haven't needed one for several decades, and I think it's probably appropriate if we're not enforcing it to take it off the books.
All right. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation?
I just curious, was this law written in 1892 or something?
It was written before most of us were born, Councilmember Baker.
I kind of figured. I just took a stab because I was just curious when it was actually written.
It reminds me of a long time back in Bhutan, they were required to get a license to buy a radio. So there's similar kind of things here.
Any other questions or comments from the committee or council?
Chair Bryant, seeing as how this is probably not nearly as difficult or even potentially controversial as the item that preceded it, I would ask that this be moved forward for a first reading.
All right. Well, I move that we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pecorell. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor to move this on to council, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for its first reading. As there's no further business before the Public Safety, Law, and Courts Committee, I return the meeting to President Jenkins.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Public Service and Transportation Committee. Councilmember Strickland.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the Public Service and Transportation Committee meeting for June 14, 2021. Members in attendance are Councilmember Codner, Councilmember Pacquiao, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, myself, and President Jenkins. Item number 1, an ordinance to authorize the purchase of 2,000 MXU meters from Census for the upgrade program and waive competitive bidding. Director Dorman.
Yes, thank you, Chair Strickland. This ordinance is so the city can begin implementing the completion of our water reads or remote reads. If you're familiar with the city right now, back in the day, you used to have somebody actually to walk around and read your meters every day or every month and give you a reading, and that's how we generate the bills. Years ago, before I actually came on board, the city decided to go with the remote read software. So right now, you'll see somebody drive around. Burmax is a company that drives around, and they drive, and as they're driving, those reads will hit them, and then they have to come and download them. What we're going with now, though, is these MXUs. The city started installing those a few years ago. That's a remote read, and if you're also familiar, we have been putting some equipment on some of our cell towers around the city. What that does, it benefits both the city and the residents. It allows the readings to read every 12 hours. So what happens is that little unit on your meter reads to the cell tower, which then sends it to our software, so we can get readings on what your water consumption is. That's what we use to generate your bill, but it's also something that we can use to kind of pinpoint if someone has maybe potential leaks in their home or running toilets. Because with that, we also have the ability on the software to look at those reports and look at high consumptions and have it spit out certain reports every day. So if we're getting high consumption reports, we can call that resident and say, hey, we noticed there's some abnormal usage in your home. You might want to check your toilets. We'll even send a technician out if it's an elderly couple or somebody else to help them out and troubleshoot some of that stuff. So basically what you're looking at here is Paul Hellman, he's here, he's our water superintendent, is the city has a few cycles, we call it, so how we do our bills. Every quarter we send out bills. We've completed one cycle in the city of putting these out. However, our goal is to get the 2 other cycles done, so then we can get away from Burmax, the company, which will save us some money as well, and we'll be able to provide our residents, better customer service and more accurate readings with the MXUs working. So.
Director Dorman, so how long will we have Burmax? So if we get this passed, how long would it take for us to get this new software in?
Yeah, well, the city's actually been working on this for a few years before I even came on board. It was just kind of getting all the pieces in place. This is one part of the puzzle. The software that we use for the billing's another part. We've been talking about this. We'd assume the goal is hopefully by mid-next year, we would have the entire city, all 12 or so thousand households transferred over. It becomes a little complicated too, because on the commercial side, sometimes you might have more than 1 meter. They may have 2 meters. But our goal is hopefully by the middle of next year, we'll be completely done with this. Now, this was a budgeted item too as well. I just want everyone to know that. This is something the city's budgets for every year. And the water department, you'll see that line item in there. It's kind of very high. It's the highest item in that CIP budget. And that's typically to buy meters and to buy these MXU units. The Burmax one, okay. So right now, we do an annual contract with Burmax. Is that an annual contract? 2 years. So we're at the end of this year with the Burmax one will expire, but we'll probably have to enter into some kind of 1-year extension with them or something based on where we are with these.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from council? I move we amend this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 2, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Strausser Paving for construction services for the 2021 water line replacement project and declaring an emergency. Director Dorman.
Yes. A few months ago, we actually came to council with an ordinance to authorize EMHT to do the design for this project. We discussed where we would be working, the reason for doing this. This line is, I think, constructed in the 1950s. We've had several breaks on this line throughout the years. And typically when we're looking at water line replacements, we're looking at the age of the line, the material of the line, and break history. If we're out there and we have 6 or 7 breaks in one block, we know that line pretty much needs repaired at that point. So, like I said, EMHT went out, they did the design work, we went out and bid this. We actually did receive 3 bids. We've been very fortunate this year to get quite a lot of bids and a lot of interest on our projects. We had Columbus Asphalt bid on this. Danbert and Strausser, all very good contractors. Strausser was the low bid, like we said, I think at $827,130. And then there is the contingency that's added in there. So.
Have we ever did any work with Strausser Paving? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much almost every year they pick up one or 2 projects. Actually, they are the ones currently doing our street project this year as well.
Okay. Are there any questions for Director Dorman from the committee? Yes. Councilmember Peckrell.
So I think why it's an emergency here?
I'm sorry?
This one, both of these legislations have emergency. Why we are going for that one?
Oh, emergency, I'm sorry. So, yes, I was explaining this a little bit today, and this is something hopefully we'll work on next year as part of our charter review and other things. Any of my public works projects, when they advertise, we have a 60-day turnaround. We either have to, sign the contracts or deny the contracts within 60 days. We opened these bids on May 28th. This was a weird month. We had 2 weeks in between council meetings, a little extra break in there. So if we do the 3 reads plus the 30-day referendum, that puts me beyond the contract, allowable time to award the contract. And that's honestly the way it's been for years. I don't know if maybe in the past you guys, I don't know how many emergencies were in the past, but we're trying to we can do the 2 reads, but the 3rd read would be we wouldn't be able to hit the window if we did that.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 3, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with EMHT for construction inspection services for the 2021 waterline replacement project and declaring an emergency. Director Dorman.
Yes, so this is essentially a follow-up. This is part B to the ordinance that we just had. This allows EMHT to go out there. We always have an on-site inspector on all of our projects, which is great for the residents. If they have questions, they can essentially just walk out their door and should be able to grab someone from the city or a representative of the city to help answer questions. They're out there measuring quantities. They're actually making sure the work is being performed per the drawings. It's our quality assurance and quality control on the job. So basically, this is just allowing them to do the inspection work for the project that we just discussed.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 4, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Visu Sewer Incorporated for the 2021 sewer improvement project and declaring an emergency. Director Dorman.
Yes, so this is, every year we do a water and sewer project. This is our sewer project this year. As you know, we were mandated by certain EPA requirements. This is called the CMOM, the Capacity Management and Operation Decree that was issued by this EPA. What we do, we go out every year, we camera the lines, the sewer lines, we check for the integrity of the lines, we check for obstructions, and we clean the lines as we're doing this as well. As you may have remembered last year with some of the flooding we had, a lot of areas in the city, our water line and our sewer lines run parallel to one another. They're pretty close to each other. Our water lines, our storm sewer lines are not watertight. They're not supposed to be watertight. But however, the sanitary should be. But over years, a lot of times those lines will start to separate a little bit, or they'll get cracks in them and things like that. So part of this project, what we do is we bring in a crew, we do all this inspection work, and then we hire a company to come in and line it. So basically what they do is they almost put a sock in, and they bring it in from one manhole and pull it out the other, and they close the manhole and heat it up to extreme temperatures, and it causes that to harden. It's like a plastic resin. So when they're done, it's like a brand new pipe without having to dig it up in the ground. The good thing about that is over the past, like last year when we talked about the Briarcliff area, when you're having that storm sewer that's not watertight leaching into the sanitary, it's causing the backups in some of these homes. Because the water's, when the storm sewer is full, when the creek's up here and the pipe's down here, the storm sewer has nowhere to go, so that pipe's just filled with water. It starts to go through the seams. It starts to infiltrate into the sanitary sewer. They call it inflow and infiltration, basically, of the sewer system. So this helps satisfy our decree, and we hope it'll help with some of the smaller backup issues we'll see from time to time on some of these homes as well.
Director Dorman, which area are we going to be concentrating in for this particular?
So this area was, this is the Briarcliff area.
Briarcliff,
Yeah, we
okay.
actually were supposed to be doing another, and we moved it to the Briarcliff area.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee on this legislation? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 5, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the EMHT for construction inspection services for the 2021 sewer line replacement project and declaring an emergency.
So once again, Part B to the ordinance that we just discussed, this is once again to allow EMHT to have an inspector out there to perform all the work, quality control, quality assurance for this project.
Any questions from council, committee? Great. I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pecoriel. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading.
Thank you.
Item-
I'm going to step aside. I'll let Mr. Shook handle the next one.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Item number 6, an ordinance to certify nuisance abatement costs associated with 54 Scenic Drive in the city of Reynoldsburg. Attorney Shook.
Yes, thank you, Chair Strickland and members of council. This is an item that obviously we discussed earlier in the council meeting as we discussed the potential for limits on domesticated animals. I believe the photographs of the property before cleanup and after cleanup were sent to members of council so that you can get a better idea of what the condition of the property is and why it cost what it cost to clean up. It was clear in the aftermath of what happened with this property that the widow who we displaced by condemning the property did not have the financial ability to be able to clean it up, and that the bank had not taken any action to foreclose or clean up the property itself. We simply could not let the property, especially as it got into the warmer months, stay in its current condition without taking some action. So we decided to take action. And since we were able to do that, we are now able to certify those costs to the county auditor so that they will place them as a lien on the property. This is similar to the other nuisance costs that are presented to council, except that it's much more money. The other costs are cumulative, usually just lawn, grass cutting. This is much more significant, but we would ask that council move this forward for a first read tonight.
Thank you, Attorney Shook. How do we get here, right? You know, I heard earlier that this particular property, the police were called out, the city was notified. How did we miss this?
Well, to be candid with you, we didn't miss it. What happened was that in late, we knew that there were dogs there, but we also didn't have any law that would have suggested that they were breaking any law at that time because we didn't have a limit on the number of dogs that they could have. We also knew that the Department of Agriculture and the Capital Area Humane Society had investigated the property in late 2019 and cleared it of any wrongdoing. So we would have needed new evidence from that time in order to be able to proceed further to take any action. Because the pandemic had hit when it hit, we were unable to make any contact with these residents. They put a sign outside their house that indicated they were high-risk residents and that they did not want to have contact with any visitors. And so consequently, we could not get consent to go in and see what was going on inside. And in addition, when we sent code officers out to the property, based on reports that we had heard from neighbors, the code officers did not observe any additional evidence that would have allowed us to proceed. So we didn't have enough evidence to either charge them with anything, and we didn't have enough evidence to get a warrant to go in. But of course, at the time in which one of the residents passed away, we were able to see with our own eyes what was going on inside, and it was very disturbing.
Yes. Thank you, Attorney Shook. Are there any questions from the committee regarding this legislation? Any from, okay, yes, Councilmember Pecoriel.
I mean, hearing you that there may be some concern, when I see the picture, this really looks very bad, but why they were doing like that? Is that because of financial hardship or something like that going on that time?
Well, I mean, I don't know, I can't look into their minds, but I think that the circumstances kind of reveal what their intent was. You know, they had been under investigation in 2019 because the neighbors had reported all the dogs that were going outside And so it's clear that what they did after going through that investigation was just leave them inside so that the neighbors wouldn't see them anymore. And they thought that they wouldn't be subjected to as many complaints. And that's how it deteriorated so quickly.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. As there is no further business for the Public Service and Transportation Committee, President Jenkins, I turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you. Next, we have Finance and Administration Committee, Councilmember Savati.
Thank you, thank you, President Jenkins. This is the Finance and Administration Committee meeting for June 14th, 2021. The members in attendance are Councilmember Baker, Councilmember Bryant, Councilmember Strickland, myself, and President Jenkins. The first item on the agenda is an ordinance to establish separate funds for accountability for federal programs authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and declaring an emergency. Good evening, Auditor Sisek.
Good evening, President Jenkins, Chairman Salvati, and members of council. Just like last year when we opened up the new funds for the CARES Act, we're opening up one fund for the American Rescue Plan. We're highly anticipating these funds coming in soon, and I ask for your permission to do so. I can't do it without you.
All right. So we're getting money. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation? Yes.
One question for you. Is there a time period that we have to spend this money? Do we have that information yet? Can you share?
Yes, we do. It's the year 2026.
Okay.
So we're not going to be under the gun like last time with the CARES Act money.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions from the rest of council?
There's one question. How much we're getting?
I will leave that question to be answered by the mayor.
Approximately $7.5 million, broken up over two payment periods. So roughly $3.7 million this year, $3.7 million next year, approximately 60 days after President Biden had signed the document, which was in early May. So we should be getting it really as soon as this is authorized, then those funds will come to us. You will see in the, at the next meeting a number of potential items for use of these funds. Cities all across the United States have been eagerly awaiting the Treasury reports on what we can and cannot use this money for. So I have a few examples in addition to some announcements that I've made previously. We talked about some of our water infrastructure issues that we're working on this year. So those are going to be funds that will be available. Small business grants, which we can go into more detail at the next meeting, as well as improving Main Street traffic light syncing, as well as what is called an Opticom system. If you're familiar with emergency vehicles driving up and down through Main Street, this would allow them to actually have all the green lights all the way, similar to other communities, including Violet Township, which we partner with, as well as beginning the first phase of the Wagner Road project for 2023, potential revenue for a service building as well. So all of those items will be up for, in addition to a number of other ones, for options to provide for council.
One more question, Mayor. Can we use some of that money for sidewalks and street or no?
No, actually, believe it or not, that's one of there are two things that we cannot use a lot of that money for. The first one specifically is for road infrastructure improvements outside of something that is directly impacted by COVID. So it would be something specifically we could not do because of COVID. However, the sidewalk program would fall in line with that. But with our other sidewalk programs, you will start to see some of those other issues from existing funds. In essence, I don't want to call it a shell game, as some have referred to it at the time, but the idea is that if we have this money here that can be used for these other items, then that will allow other revenues from traditional means through our general fund that we can use those for other items as we kind of go through. So it does help. It is going to be a very big benefit to the city of Reynoldsburg. Most cities are identifying long-term projects that have been unable to be fulfilled as items to target with this, specifically in this case, the water infrastructure, which will be a big benefit to the city, including more areas in those homes where we have older piping and things of that nature.
Councilman Pacquiao, there's also a directive from the Treasury that I have available if you'd like it. It's readily available online for anyone that wants to read it, and it has a lot of good facts on it. The one thing that we always find is that these directives change over the course of the next year while we have the money, so it could become more liberal or more strict. We'll never know until it happens.
That's why you're getting a lot of things sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions from either committee or council? Great. I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Strickland. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. This ordinance be forwarded to council as a first reading.
Thank you.
Thank you, Auditor. Second on the agenda is an ordinance to amend the personal procedure manual regarding fleet safety policy and medical marijuana. Welcome,
Good evening.
Director Bowler.
This ordinance is requesting 2 items be added to the personal procedure manual. When the insurance company, we switched carriers, they did an audit of some of our policies, and we were lacking a little bit in our fleet safety, which we had pieces and parts in other parts of our PPM, but they wanted it all encompassed into one section. So we pulled all the pieces together and have put that in place. The second part is just the medical marijuana, just adding language in there for medical marijuana. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
I read through them all. They seem to make sense, but any questions from the committee? Any questions from the rest of council? Great. All right. I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Baker. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. This ordinance will be forwarded to council as a first reading. That's the end of the business for the Finance Administration Committee, and I return the meeting to President Jenkins.
Thank you. Item 12 on the agenda is the consent agenda for first reading. Items 12A through I are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a first reading unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion. Council will move forward with a first reading. Would the clerk please read items 12A through I?
Item A, an ordinance to amend Chapter 373 Bicycles and Motorcycles of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg to remove bicycle licensing requirements. B, an ordinance to authorize the purchase of 2,000 MXU meters from Census for the upgrade program and waive competitive bidding. C, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Strasser Paving for construction services for the 2021 waterline project and declaring an emergency. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with EMH&T for construction inspection services for the 2021 water replacement project and declaring an emergency. E, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Visu Sewer, Inc. for the 2021 sewer improvement project and declaring it an emergency. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with EMH&T for construction inspection services for the 2021 sewer line replacement project and declaring an emergency. G, an ordinance to certify nuisance abatement costs associated with 54 Scenic Drive in the city of Reynoldsburg. H, an ordinance to establish separate fund and accountability for federal programs authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and declaring an emergency. An ordinance to amend the personal procedure manual regarding fleet safety policy and medical marijuana.
May I have a motion to approve these ordinances?
So move.
Councilmember Strickland, may I have a second? Councilmember Pacquiao. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Salvati?
Aye.
Councilmember Pecoro?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
And Councilmember Cotner.
Aye.
Madam the President, the vote was 7-0.
These ordinances stand for a first reading. Item 13 on the agenda, consent agenda for a second reading. Items 13A through F are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a second reading unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion. Council will move forward for a second reading. Would the clerk please read items 13A through F?
Item A, an ordinance to approve the final plat plan for Spring Hill Farm Development, Section 2, Part A. B, an ordinance to approve the final plat plan for Spring Hill Farm Development, Section 2, Part B. C, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance costs 2020 for collection by the Franklin County Auditor. D, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance costs 2020 for collection at the Licking County Auditor. E, an resolution adopting the tax budget for the city of Reynoldsburg for the fiscal year beginning 2020 and declaring an emergency. And F, an ordinance appropriating funds for the Bryce Road Main Street TIF for agency transfer to allow for payment to the Reynoldsburg City School District.
These ordinances stand for a second reading. Item 14 on the agenda is consent agenda for a third reading. Item 14A is part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a third reading and approval. Unless someone wants to remove this item for further discussion, council will move forward with a vote on this ordinance. Would the clerk please read item 14A?
An ordinance appropriating funds from the unappropriated general fund to various accounts in the Parks and Recreation Department.
May I have a motion to approve this ordinance? Councilmember Baker, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Pacquiao, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Salvati?
Aye.
Councilmember Pecoro?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
Councilmember Cotner.
Aye.
That was 7-0.
This ordinance is approved with 7 affirmative votes and no negative votes. Item 15 on the agenda is other council matters. Does anyone have any other items that they would like to discuss this evening?
Yes, I have one thing to add here. The 17th, we have a farmers market, among many other things. And within the farmer market, there's a special event. First time, thank you, Mayor, for bringing that idea, and first time celebrating a cultural event within the farmers market. So first, Bhutanese cultural event, the showcase will be there. There's a food available, dance, music, and kids play. All the things will be there. Weather permitted. I don't know what happened if there's rain. So, so I would like all of you to come and test Bhutanese Nepali food and enjoy the music on farmers market this Thursday.
Thank you. Does anyone else on council have anything else? Yes.
It's more of an announcement. So last year, we awarded the first Mel Clemens Community Service Award. And so I just want to start advertising for nominations for the award. Last year, April Darling won the award, which was rightfully so, because she embodied what the award was about. So we're looking for another individual that we can recognize who have helped the community grow through community service. And so if you want more information, it is on the city's website, and we will announce the winner in December. So I'm just starting to advertise for that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to discuss this evening? Next on the agenda is executive session.
This is not my executive session, Council President, but yes, you will need a motion to go into executive session for the stated reason on the agenda.
Madam President, you can go ahead and
Okay.
use that language there.
Okay, may I have a motion to move into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes? Councilmember Baker, and a second, Councilmember Bryant. Thank you. Council invites Mayor.
Madam President, I'll do the roll call.
You have to vote to go into it. You have to vote. Have her call the roll.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Savati?
Aye.
Councilmember Pecoro?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
And Councilmember Cotner.
Aye.
Council invites Mayor Begany, Attorney Shook, Auditor Sisak, Director Browser, Clerk Prasher into the executive session.
Madam President, we anticipate no additional business following the return to regular meeting after executive session.
Thank you.
And if everyone would please leave.
Yes, which I did not know either. That's a new thing. We'll begin momentarily.